The man who didn't belong. The velvet carpet stretched across the palace floor like a river of red grace. Chandeliers sparkled above, casting golden rain over polished marble, expensive gowns, and polished shoes. The royal gala had officially begun, and everyone in attendance wore their status like a crown. This wasn't a place for ordinary people. It was a room built on lineage, legacy, and luxury. And yet, among the princes, baronesses, and billionaires, one man stood quietly near the back, holding a glass of water instead of champagne. His name was Keanu Reeves. He wasn't dressed like the others. No tuxedo tailored by Italian hands, no diamond cufflinks, no polished hair. Keanu wore a simple black suit with scuffed shoes and a tie he'd knotted himself. He had been invited, sure, by someone close to the palace, but the invitation didn't protect him from the cold glances or raised eyebrows that followed his every step. He didn't care. Not really. He wasn't here for attention. He wasn't here for power. He was here because someone had once shown him kindness, and he had come to return it. But that part of the story would unfold later. The music softened. A woman with sharp eyes and sharper words moved across the floor like a hawk spotting prey. Her name was Sabrina Lockwood, heir to an oil empire, and known for her ruthless charm. She caught sight of Keanu standing near a display of hand-carved sculptures and narrowed her eyes, as if a flaw had appeared in an otherwise flawless painting. "How quaint," she said, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "They've started. Letting in actors now. What's next? Delivery drivers? Mechanics?" Laughter followed, light, cruel, and eager to please her. Keanu didn't respond. He gave her a gentle nod and took a sip of his water. Sabrina walked closer, her voice dripping. With mockery, "Tell me, Mr. Reeves, do you plan to save the world tonight? Maybe jump from a helicopter? Or are you just here to admire art you can't pronounce?" The room quieted just enough for her words to sting harder. People turned, curious. The actor everyone admired on screen was being cornered in real life. But Keanu, as always, didn't flinch. "I'm just here to celebrate someone's life," he said softly. "How poetic," Sabrina scoffed. "Do you even know anyone here worth celebrating?" Keanu looked away, not out of shame, but because he saw something else. An elderly man seated by himself near the edge of the ballroom, his back bent, his face partially hidden. That was why he'd come. For him. But Sabrina wasn't done. She stepped forward, invading his space, her voice like silk laced with venom. "You see, people like you don't understand our world. You smile too much. You thank waiters. You open doors for strangers. This isn't a film set, Mr. Reeves. This is real life. And in real life, kindness doesn't buy you power." Keanu gave her a small smile. Not one of anger or pride, but something almost sad. "Then maybe your version of real life is missing something." Before she could reply, a soft gasp rippled through the crowd. Heads turned, cameras were lowered, the air shifted. Prince William had entered the ballroom. He wasn't in a rush. He moved with quiet confidence, greeting guests with sincerity, not ceremony. When he reached Sabrina and Keanu, the silence became a kind of spotlight. "Keanu," Prince William said warmly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I'm glad you made it. I was hoping you would." Sabrina froze. The prince turned to her and added, "This man once gave my friend a ride home when her car broke down. Didn't ask for anything. Didn't even say who he was. Just helped her and disappeared." The room shifted again. Sabrina blinked, suddenly unsure of her place. "Tonight's gala," Prince William continued, "is in memory of Sir Richard Hayes, a man who spent his life helping underprivileged children. And Keanu was one of the first to donate anonymously when Richard fell ill." Keanu looked down. He hadn't come for recognition, just for respect. Sabrina's mouth opened, but no words came out. Her power was built on perception, and now that perception was cracking. "Perhaps," Prince William said gently. We should all remember that kindness is never misplaced, even in a room like this. And with that, the prince walked Keanu toward the elderly man in the corner, the very man the Gala honored. As the two moved away, Sabrina stood in stunned silence, her face suddenly pale under the chandelier's glow. The room no longer looked at Keanu with quiet judgment. Now, they saw something else. Someone who didn't need to belong to prove his worth. Someone whose quiet heart echoed louder than any title. But just as Keanu knelt beside the old man and took his hand, the lights flickered. Then the music stopped. A low voice crackled through the speakers. Mr. Reeves, there is something you must know. The room held its breath, and in that instant, the Gala changed forever. The envelope beneath the chair. The room had gone quiet. Too quiet. Chandeliers still glistened like frozen stars above, but the music had fallen away, leaving only the hum of tension and whispered confusion. Guests exchanged puzzled glances. Some, assuming it was a technical glitch, others sensing something deeper. Keanu Reeves remained still, kneeling beside the old man whose frail hand now gripped his fingers with unexpected strength. The old man's name was Sir Richard Hayes, a man who had once believed in a better world and had spent decades trying to build it. Keanu had come to honor him, not knowing that tonight would deliver more than memories. It would unveil a truth hidden in silence. Just as Prince William leaned in to check on Sir Richard, a staff member rushed toward the audio control panel, at the side of the hall. The mysterious voice that had echoed through the speakers didn't repeat, but its message clung to the walls like fog. Guests began murmuring, and Sabrina Larkwood's smirk had now vanished completely. She hovered at the edge of the room, her earlier cruelty now replaced with unease. Something about the interruption made her nervous, and not just because she had embarrassed herself in front of royalty. Keanu gently helped Sir Richard into a better sitting position, speaking to him with a tone that only kindness could shape. Was that for me? He asked, unsure if the old man had heard the announcement. Sir Richard didn't answer. Instead, his eyes drifted down to the floor beneath his chair. Trembling slightly, he motioned with his other hand. Keanu looked closer. Wedged beneath the wooden leg of the chair, almost invisible, was a sealed envelope with his name written on the front. Not printed, handwritten. Delicate, but unmistakable. Someone left this for me? Keanu asked softly. Sir Richard nodded, once, and his voice came out as a whisper. It was placed there this morning. They said it would make sense only if you came. Carefully, Keanu retrieved the envelope. The texture of the paper was thick, almost old-fashioned, and the ink carried the kind of weight people don't use anymore. Each stroke was deliberate, personal, and fragile. He tucked it into the inside pocket of his jacket for now. The timing was strange, and the moment even stranger. Someone wanted him here. Someone knew he would come. Prince William noticed the exchange and lowered his voice. Do you want me to have it checked? Keanu shook his head. Not yet. I need to read it first. Before either of them could speak further, another guest, a middle-aged woman with nervous hands, rushed to the front of the hall. She wasn't part of the royal family or high society. Her dress was elegant, but not extravagant, and she looked like she'd been holding back tears since the evening began. I'm sorry, she called out to the crowd, drawing eyes again. I need to speak with Mr. Reeves. Please. It's about Sir Richard. And your mother. Keanu's breath caught. In his chest. His mother. No one here should have known anything about her. She had passed away many years ago, quietly, without drama or spotlight. She had always preferred the quiet moments. Charity work no one filmed, advice no one quoted, love that never asked for applause. What could this woman possibly know? Stood slowly, motioning for the woman to come closer. Who are you? He asked gently. My name is Claire Fielding, she said, her hands shaking. I worked with your mother and Richard in the early days of the shelter program, back when it was still just a rented church basement and a dream. They helped people like me, and They helped someone else, someone you don't know about. The envelope in his jacket suddenly felt heavier. Go on, Keanu said. Claire looked around the room, as if gathering the strength to expose a secret that had been kept for too long. Richard kept a journal, and before this event, he told me to make sure you got it, but he said I had to wait until the voice spoke your name. Keanu frowned. The voice from the speakers? She nodded. Yes, it's all connected. The letter, the journal, and a promise your mother made before she died. Every person in the room was listening now, not out of gossip, but something deeper. The evening was no longer just a royal gala. It had become a turning point, a crossroads between past and present. Prince William stepped aside, giving Claire space. There's something else, she said, her voice trembling. There's a boy. He's 15 now. His name is Thomas, and he's your brother. The floor seemed to tilt beneath Keanu's feet. He didn't speak. Couldn't. Everything around him dimmed for a moment. The chandeliers, the music returning softly in the background, the polished room, the curious eyes. It all vanished in the noise of those words. A brother. His mother had never mentioned another child. Never hinted. Never explained. And yet Claire stood there with tears in her eyes, not seeking attention, not asking for favors. Only the truth. Why now? Keanu asked quietly. Why tonight? Claire looked over at Sir Richard, whose eyes had closed again, resting in the chair like a man who had carried too many secrets for too long. Because he wanted to be sure you'd understand, that you'd be ready to forgive her and protect him. Keanu pressed his hand against the envelope, still tucked inside his jacket, and slowly nodded. Where is Thomas now? Claire opened her mouth to answer, but before the words could come, the ballroom doors burst open with a sudden force. 2 palace guards ran in. We have a problem, one of them said urgently. Thomas is missing. He left his room 20 minutes ago, and we believe someone else is looking for him. A hush fell over the room, and Keanu Reeves stood at the center of it all. No longer just a guest, no longer just an actor. He was now a brother. And somewhere in London, a boy he had never met was running from someone, or something, that had just changed everything. The boy in the fog. The streets of London stretched endlessly beneath a sky painted in deep charcoal grey. Fog wrapped itself around every lamppost and alley, rolling in from the Thames like a soft breath holding secrets. Under this cold and ghostly veil, a boy with tangled hair and worn sneakers ran through the silent morning streets. His name was Thomas. He didn't know where he was going, only that he had to keep moving. The whispers behind the doors of the palace had reached his ears, and though he didn't fully understand the weight of them, he understood fear. It had always lived close to him, whispering at night, hiding in his pocket, shaping the way he saw the world. He didn't know who Keanu Reeves was, not really. He had seen him in a movie once, half-watched from the corner of a shelter TV screen while the adults argued in the background. He remembered something about him being calm, kind even in the middle of chaos. But today, the name meant something different. It meant answers. Or maybe danger. Claire had told him that he would be safe if he waited at the palace, that people would protect him. But he had waited his whole life, and the only thing waiting had ever given him was silence. Thomas turned down a narrow lane lined with old buildings, their windows flickering behind curtains as if watching. He paused beside a broken phone booth and rested his hands on his knees, breathing hard. The air was cold, but it wasn't what made him shiver. It was the feeling that someone was following him. Back at the palace, Keanu Reeves moved through the royal corridors with a calm that masked the storm inside him. Prince William walked beside him, speaking quietly to the security team through an earpiece while staff checked surveillance footage. No one had expected the night to twist like this. What began as a tribute had become a search, both for a missing boy and for the truth buried deep in someone else's past. Claire had given Keanu one more piece of information before the panic began. Thomas had been part of a closed adoption handled through a private agency, an agency funded quietly by Sir Richard Hayes and another unknown donor. The files had been sealed, erased from public record, but Sir Richard had left breadcrumbs for those willing to see. The envelope Keanu still hadn't opened, now pulsed in his jacket like a heartbeat. He stopped in the hallway, away from the eyes and voices, and slowly opened the flap. Inside was a single sheet of paper folded twice. The handwriting was delicate, but purposeful. It read, "Dear Keanu, if you are reading this, then time has done what I could not. I lied to you once, not out of cruelty, but to protect you, and him. Thomas is your brother. Your mother never wanted him to grow up in your shadow. She wanted him to be free, but freedom has a cost. Now that I am gone, you are the only one left who can protect him. They're looking for him, and this time they won't stop." Beneath the message was a name, Gregor Kane. Keanu's fingers closed slowly around the letter. The name stirred something old in him, something from a film set over a decade ago, where security had been doubled and someone had tried to approach him on 3 separate occasions. Back then, it had been dismissed as fan obsession. But now, with the context of this message, he wondered if those were the first signs of something more sinister. "We tracked Thomas's phone signal," Prince William said, appearing at the end of the hallway. "He's heading into the east, Borough District. Not a good area at this hour." Keanu didn't wait. "Send your team. I'm going too." "You don't have to." "Yes, I do," Keanu said. "He's not just a kid. He's my blood. And someone out there knows it." Meanwhile, Thomas had ducked into the back of an old corner cafe with a busted neon sign barely clinging to the window. The woman behind the counter looked up but said, "Nothing." The boy's eyes were too sharp for his age, and the way he kept checking the door said more than words ever could. She nodded quietly toward the rear hallway, and Thomas slipped through it without a word. But someone else had seen him. Outside, a man in a dark coat watched through the fog, his breath forming clouds that vanished into the night. He didn't wear a uniform. He didn't need to. His presence was quiet, confident, the kind of silence that followed people like a debt. Gregor Kane wasn't just looking for Thomas, he was hunting him. And unlike the others, he had no intention of bringing the boy back safe. Back in the car, Keanu rode in silence. He stared out the window as London blurred past. Brick walls, closed shutters, rain-kissed streets. It reminded him of the times he had wandered cities alone after shooting Wrapped, trying to find places where he could disappear. He had never wanted to be a symbol or a hero. He just wanted to make things a little better than they were. But tonight, life had cast him into a role no script could prepare him for. As the car turned the final corner, Prince William's voice came through the comms. "We've identified Kane, former intelligence contractor, dismissed after a private scandal involving child protection services. No official charges. Vanished 3 years ago." Keanu's jaw tightened. "And now he's after Thomas. Most likely for leverage," William said. "Or worse." The cafe came into view. Keanu stepped out before the vehicle fully stopped. The neon sign flickered above him, casting red on the wet ground. He moved quickly through the front door, eyes scanning. The woman behind the counter simply nodded toward the back. Keanu didn't hesitate. He pushed open the door to the rear hallway and saw Thomas huddled near a stack of crates, wide-eyed, fists clenched. "Who are you?" the boy asked, backing away. "I'm your brother," Keanu said, "and I'm here to take you home. But..." Before Thomas could respond, a shadow moved at the end of the hallway. A voice cold and smooth whispered, "How touching." Gregor Kane stepped forward, and his smile was anything but kind. The man with no echo, the hallway dimmed as Gregor Kane advanced, the flickering light overhead throwing his shadow like a net across the floor. He didn't carry a weapon in sight, but something about his stillness felt more dangerous than any gun. His smile never touched his eyes. They were cold, flat, the kind that didn't blink when bad things happened. Thomas stood frozen, breathing hard, his fingers curling against the crates behind him. Keanu stepped in front of the boy with quiet resolve, shielding him without words, the space between them becoming a wall. "You're not supposed to be here," Gregor said, his voice too calm for the tension in the air. "The plan wasn't written for you, Mr. Reeves. The plan was written for silence. But now the world's favorite good guy wants to play hero. How predictable." Keanu's voice didn't rise, but it carried. "You're not taking him." Gregor tilted his head slightly. "I already have. I've had him since the day he was born, just not in the way you think." Keanu didn't respond right away. His mind worked like a camera lens, tightening its focus. There was something behind those words. Something more than threat. A truth woven into the lie. Gregor's eyes flicked to Thomas. "You know, boy, the people who raised you weren't random. Your placement wasn't an accident. Sir Richard didn't just fund shelters. He hid what the government couldn't admit existed. You. And a few others like you." "He's just a kid," Keanu said. "Leave him alone." "That's the mistake people always make," Gregor replied, stepping closer. "They assume children are harmless, but he isn't. He's the key to something much bigger than you. Understand? You think this is about family? This is about legacy. His DNA. Your DNA. It's not just blood, it's design." Keanu felt Thomas flinch behind him. The boy's breathing quickened. The fog outside the broken window behind them had crept in, swirling across the floor like ghostly fingers. It was cold now, but not from the weather. It was cold from something deeper, a warning carried on instinct. "How do you know all this?" Keanu asked, buying seconds. "Because your mother didn't just give birth to 2 sons," Gregor said. "She gave birth to a project, a hope, an experiment that proved human kindness could be inherited." "You're lying," Keanu said, though part of him already knew it wasn't that simple. Gregor smiled, stepping back now, as if the monologue had served its purpose. "You always thought your compassion made you weak, but it was designed, it was tested, you passed, he hasn't yet." He gestured toward Thomas without looking at him, as if pointing to an equation. "And if he doesn't pass," Gregor added, "then everything your mother believed in dies with him." Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Security, police, maybe even the royal detail. Someone had called them, or perhaps Prince William's people had tracked them here. Gregor heard it too. He gave a small bow, mocking in its elegance. "Well then," he said, "the stage is yours, actor. Enjoy your reunion. But remember, some truths were never meant to be uncovered." He turned and vanished through the back door, disappearing into the fog like a man with no echo, no past, no trace. By the time Keanu reached the door, he was gone. Back inside, Thomas sank to the ground. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just sat with his arms wrapped around his knees, his face buried between them. Keanu crouched beside him, unsure if he should speak or wait. Eventually, the boy whispered, "Is any of it true?" "I don't know," Keanu said, "but I know. This, who you are, isn't something he gets to decide." Thomas looked up, and for the first time, Keanu saw the fear give way to something else. Not trust yet, but the beginning of it. Outside, the flashing lights arrived, painting the streets in red and blue. As Prince William's team secured the perimeter and cleared the building, Keanu and Thomas were guided into a waiting vehicle. Claire was already inside, tears in her eyes, clutching a journal in her lap. "Richard's journal," she said. "It has the answers, all of them. About your mother, about the project, about Gregor." Keanu reached for it slowly, but Thomas's voice stopped him. "Wait, not yet." Keanu looked at the boy, surprised. "I want to hear it from you first," Thomas said. "Not from a book, not from paper. I want to know who you are and why you care." Keanu sat back, and in the silence of the moving car, he began to tell him. Not the story of experiments or legacy, but the story of a boy who had grown up far from royal galas and grand plans. A boy who lost his father early, who watched his mother work 2 jobs and still find time to feed strangers, who grew up believing that small kindnesses were the biggest power a person could have. He spoke slowly, but not carefully. He told the truth. Thomas listened, his eyes never leaving Keanu's face. But far away, inside an unmarked room lit by a single bulb, Gregor Kane stood before a wall of photos. Most were old. Surveillance shots, adoption records, medical files. At the center of it all, one photo was circled in red. Thomas, younger, standing beside a woman at a shelter. Beneath it, in scrawled ink, were the words, "Phase 2 begins when the truth breaks him." And next to it, pinned just recently, was a new photo, Keanu Reeves at the Gala. And below it, "If he won't let go, then he becomes the key." The weight of broken glass. The journal lay unopened on the polished table between them, its cracked leather cover stretching in the quiet like a breath held too long. The room they now occupied wasn't part of the royal palace. Prince William had discreetly moved them into a private estate, tucked beyond the reach of cameras and headlines. Here, beneath the aged beams of an old library that smelled of firewood and history, Keanu and Thomas sat across from each other while the world outside tried to make sense of what had just begun. Keanu watched Thomas study the edges of the journal without touching it. The boy looked older than his years when he was quiet, but when he moved or shifted, there was still the trace of a child, unsure whether the floor beneath him was safe to stand on. Claire had stayed downstairs. She'd said too much already and knew this moment didn't belong to her anymore. "We don't have to open it," Keanu said gently. "Not yet." Thomas didn't answer. His hands hovered just above the journal, like someone trying to remember how to hold something fragile. "Finally," he whispered. "She wrote inside this, didn't she? My mother." Keanu nodded slowly. "Some of it, yes. The rest is Sir Richard's handwriting. They worked together for years and kept secrets they thought the world couldn't handle." "Why?" Thomas asked. "What were they afraid of?" Keanu leaned back, eyes lifting toward the old bookshelf behind the boy. That the world would turn kindness into a weapon. That people like Gregor would take something beautiful and twist it. Thomas opened the journal. The pages were filled with handwriting that looped and curved like rivers crossing time. The entries were not in order. They weren't even dated properly. Some were just pieces, sentences trailing off, scribbles crossed out, thoughts recorded during moments of fear or hope. Keanu read over Thomas's shoulder as the boy flipped through the first few pages. Then they stopped on one passage that was underlined twice in blue ink. "We didn't create kindness. We revealed it. Selected children raised in compassion. Developed different neural pathways. Stronger empathy, instinctive trust, a resistance to cruelty. But not all the subjects reacted the same. One failed. He became cold, calculating. We called him Kane." Thomas slowly looked up at Keanu. "He was part of it too?" the boy asked. Keanu nodded. "He was the first." Thomas swallowed hard. "And I'm the last." The fire beside them cracked, throwing sparks behind the glass. Keanu stood and walked over to the window, staring out at the misted garden beyond. It was quiet, but too still, like the air itself waited for the next. "Chapter, what happens now?" Thomas asked behind him. Keanu turned, the firelight catching the lines of his face. "You decide what kind of person you're going to be. Not a subject, not a legacy, just you." But as he spoke, the windows trembled. A sound echoed from the driveway. Not a siren, not a car, a slow, mechanical crunching. Keanu crossed the room and pulled back the curtain. Outside, the estate gate had been crushed inward. A vehicle had rammed through it. Not a van, Not a police cruiser. Something black and unmarked, with armored sides and no license plate. His voice dropped. They're here. Thomas stood, panic flickering in his eyes. Who? Keanu didn't answer. He didn't need to. The doorbell didn't ring. The house didn't shake. But somehow they both knew. Gregor Kane had arrived. And this time, he hadn't come to talk. Downstairs, Claire screamed. Keanu was already halfway to the door. Stay here, he shouted to Thomas, but the boy followed anyway. In the hallway below, a figure stepped through the shattered entryway. Tall, calm, dusting broken wood off his shoulder as if he were shaking snow. Gregor's eyes scanned the room and landed instantly on the boy standing on the stairs. He smiled, but it was hollow. You read the journal, he said. So now you know you're not just a child. You're a question, and I'm the answer. Keanu stepped between them, fists clenched. I don't care what you think you are, he said. You're not touching him. Gregor's expression didn't change, but his voice dropped into something darker. You think I came alone? Behind him, 3 more figures stepped inside. No badges, no insignias, just sharp movements and eyes trained for obedience. They weren't soldiers. They were believers. And Gregor was their messiah. Thomas stepped down one stair. Why me? He asked. Why not just disappear? Gregor's eyes lit with something close to admiration. Because you're the only one left who can prove that kindness isn't a fluke. If you live, they'll believe it works. And that terrifies people. Keanu moved fast, grabbing a poker from beside the fireplace and striking one of the guards before they could reach for anything. Chaos exploded in the room. Furniture toppled. The journal flew into the firelight and skidded to a stop inches from the flame. Claire pulled Thomas back, shielding him as Gregor and Keanu clashed. 2 men shaped by opposite versions of the same truth. The fight wasn't graceful. It wasn't choreographed like in the movies. It was raw, brutal, each strike filled with the weight of betrayal and purpose. Gregor was stronger, but Keanu had something else. He had reason. And when the fire crackled louder, Thomas reached for the journal and did something no one expected. He opened it and tore out the pages. Everyone stopped. You want this? He shouted. You want proof? Then you don't get it. And he tossed the burning pages into the hearth. Silence crashed down. Gregor's face twisted, not in rage, but in realization. You really are your mother's son, he whispered. Police. Lights splashed against the broken windows just seconds later. Someone had triggered the panic system. Sirens wailed again, but this time they weren't late. Gregor didn't fight. He dropped his arms and smiled as they cuffed him. This isn't the end, he said to Keanu. It's only the pause. And as he was led out into the night, Keanu turned to Thomas. You didn't have to destroy it, he said. But Thomas looked up with clear eyes and said, I don't want to be proven. I want to be believed. The royal invitation, days passed like mist, rolling over a city still waking up from a long, restless night. The estate had been restored to calm, but the silence it now held felt different. Like the silence after a storm that leaves everything standing, but slightly changed. Outside, snow had begun to fall across the London rooftops, blanketing the chaos of the past week in white. But inside the old library, where everything had unfolded, warmth and memory still flickered in the fireplace. Thomas sat near the window, watching the flakes swirl gently through the cold air. For once, he wasn't running. Keanu entered the room quietly, holding 2 mugs of tea. He set one beside the boy, who barely glanced away from the window. Sleep, okay? Keanu asked. Sort of, Thomas said. I dreamed about her. Not Claire, my real mom. Keanu sat beside him. Do you remember what she said? Thomas nodded slowly. She said, I wasn't made to save the world. I was made to love it. Keanu didn't speak. He just placed his hand gently on the boy's shoulder and let the silence wrap around them like a warm coat. There was no press conference. No headlines. Prince William had ensured that the entire incident was sealed, categorized under private threat mitigation. Gregor Kane had vanished into a classified location, and his loyalists were either arrested or disappeared quietly. There was no trial, no statement, only a single assurance whispered by the prince to Keanu behind closed doors. He won't hurt him again. Yet even in secrecy, the world had shifted. One morning, weeks later, an envelope arrived, not from a palace, not from a court, but from a girl named Eliza who lived in Manchester. She had watched a video, not of the attack, but of Keanu Reeves, exiting a cafe with his arm around a frightened boy's shoulders. Someone had filmed it from across the street. There had been no sound. Just a quiet moment where a child had been guided gently towards safety. Eliza wrote, "I don't know what happened, but my brother said he's not afraid anymore because the man from the movies protects real kids too." The letter reached Keanu's hands while he was fixing a broken light bulb in the cottage they now stayed in. Thomas read it over his shoulder. "You're a hero," Thomas said. Keanu shook his head. "Nah, heroes wear capes, I wear coffee stains." But Thomas smiled, and for the first time, it wasn't forced. Later that week, another invitation came, this time from Prince William himself, an official gala. Royal grounds. Guest of honor, Thomas Reeves. Keanu frowned when he read it. "They want you to speak?" Thomas shrugged. "I think they want me to be seen, not just by cameras, but by people who don't believe kids like me exist." Keanu smiled. "You sure you're ready?" "Only if you come too," Thomas said. So they went. The hall was the same one where Keanu had been mocked not long ago, but it didn't feel the same. Not anymore. The chandeliers still sparkled, the marble still gleamed, but this time, the eyes that turned toward him did not carry scorn. They carried recognition. As the announcer called Thomas's name, the room applauded. Not out of duty, out of admiration. The boy stepped up to the microphone with Keanu at his side. He wore a black jacket, nothing fancy, and sneakers that still squeaked slightly. But he stood tall, and he said only one thing. Kindness is not weakness. It's the loudest way to say, "I see you." The applause was quiet at first. Then it grew louder, warmer, not royal, not forced. Real. After the speech, Sabrina Locke would approach them again, but this time her voice had no thorns, only curiosity. "I was wrong about you," she said to Keanu. "And him." Keanu nodded. "A lot of people are wrong before they're right." Sabrina turned to Thomas and offered her hand. "I hope you'll let me help fund the shelters." "Now, no cameras, just the money." Thomas considered it, then smiled. "Only if you come visit them too." And for once, Sabrina had no clever reply, only a quiet nod. When the night ended and they walked out beneath the cold stars, Thomas looked up at Keanu and said, "You think we'll be okay?" Keanu paused, then wrapped an arm around the boy. "We're not supposed to be perfect," he said. "We're supposed to keep trying." As the snow fell again, softer now, the two walked down the royal steps, not as strangers, not as projects or legends, but as family, and somewhere far away in a cell no one could visit. Gregor Kane sat in silence staring at the wall. He had lost the boy, but the truth he had feared was now out there, living, breathing, growing stronger. Every day, that in a world trained to trust power, the real revolution had always been kindness.